The Bike Club podcast is a collaboration between Beth Curran and Akshaya Parthasarathi.
The Bike Club podcast acknowledges the traditional custodians of the land we record on. We pay our respects to elders past, present, and emerging.
Welcome to Bike Club, a tech podcast crafted by the girls for the girls. Our mission to elevate, educate, and explore the exciting world of technology.
So tune in and remember, the first rule of Bike Club is to talk about Bike Club.
Hey everyone, this is Akshaya.
And this is Beth.
And welcome to episode 1 of the Bike Club podcast.
Woohoo, so exciting.
Very exciting, very nervous.
You'll be fine.
So before we jump into our spotlight women for this episode, do you want to give us the first rule of Bike Club, Beth? And please imagine drum rolls.
Yes. Yes, imaginary drum rolls. So yes, if you listen to our episode 0, you'll know that we're going to do a different rule of Bike Club each episode. So rule 1 is a bit of a spin on the rule 1 of Fight Club, where you don't talk about Fight Club. At Bike Club, our first rule is that we do talk about Bike Club because we want to get the word out there. We want to build a bit of a community around women in tech, and we want to get awareness of the amazing things that women have done in the technology space. So I want to talk about it, talk about them, talk about their stories, because tech is so full of stories of male achievements and voices. And so, yeah, we want to get the word out. So the first rule of Bike Club is to talk about Bike Club.
Woohoo! Very well said. Very well said, actually. And yeah, we should talk about Bike Club because there's also enough times that we feel shy enough to talk about our achievements because we think we're gonna toot our own horns, and yeah, there's a lot of layers to this one rule, isn't there?
Yes, well, it's in our intro. It's very important. So
yeah, exactly. Awesome. So today's episode kind of shocked me as well, because the woman that I have researched about plays quite a pivotal role with a tool that we use so frequently today and possibly has shaped every kind of artificial intelligent language model that may even come out in the future, which, as we know, is a pretty hot topic right now. But before I get started on this, I just want to ask you, Beth, have you ever wondered about like the mechanisms of a search engine, like Google or Bing or whatever, and about how sometimes you look for a particular thing and you get a bunch of results, but have you ever wondered how it fetches those results exactly?
Yes.
With like the relevancy that you need?
Yes, I have actually. I think that was one of the first things that I ever was like curious about in tech. Like when I was a kid and I was first using search engines, I was like, how does it just find stuff? Like I can type in any random word and it just finds all these things that match it. That's crazy.
I don't know about you, but I've done quite a few things, like even just searching song tunes on Google, songs that go da 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 da, and then there it is. That's exactly what I'm looking for. Well, we have a woman to thank for that, and her name is Karen Spärck Jones. Born in Yorkshire, England in 1935 to an English father, Owen Jones, who was a British chemist, and a Norwegian mum, Ida Spärck,
That's
who
such
worked
a cool
as
name.
a government employee. Yeah, isn't it? Ida Spärck. Yeah, and then she's also a pretty badass woman because she fled to England on one of those last boats from Norway when it was under attack during World War II. Yeah, I know, we're already very invested.
What a cool family.
Yeah. So Karen was raised during a time of war, right? And it just so happened that she's had these parents who instilled with her from a very young age that education is super important. Everything that you do needs to be earned, and you got to work hard in order to get to like big places. So she just grew up to be this normal child with obviously really good grades. She grew up, pursued a degree in history from the University of Cambridge in 1956. There was something I read about how her dad also because he was a British chemist, right? And he wanted Karen to also pursue something sciencey.
Yep.
And we don't exactly know if he was disappointed by her choice of wanting to be a teacher.
Yep. Black sheep of the
She,
family.
yeah. Let's hope not. Let's hope like the societal pressure wasn't that bad back then. So she was a teacher for quite some time, but then once she got married to a Roger Needham, who worked at Cambridge, specifically the Cambridge Language Research Unit.
Mhm.
She found herself sneaking into this lab where they were studying a few things.
Love that.
Yeah, and eventually I think satisfied her dad's wish because after that she just launched herself into this world of research and said goodbye to her teaching days. So the Cambridge Language Research Unit at that time was researching machine translation of the human language. So basically, the crux of coding, what we do right now, these were people that were writing languages that would help us interact with humans. And it piqued her interest because I think, languages, it's interesting. And, her husband worked there and she was just like, yeah, whatever, I'm just gonna go for it. I heard that she was particularly inspired by the founder of the CLRU, who was a Margaret Masterman. And she's described this individual as a wowski individual. I love that. I love that adjective, wowski.
That's so good.
I want to start calling. I want to start calling people, wowski.
Yeah, just walk past you at work. You're so wowski today.
Yeah,
Shab.
you're wowski. Yeah. And what's more fun is that she really connected with Margaret because of the fact that both of them kept their maiden names.
Yeah, see, I said it was a cool
Yeah.
name. I was like, you can't give up the last name Spark. That's amazing.
I know, yeah. And, Margaret Masterman was her maiden name. And she was like, yeah, you know what? And she's actually quoted saying, name's too important of an individuality to just give it up, I was
Oh,
like,
I love
cool.
that.
Oh, preach, let's go. Margaret obviously saw how interested Karen was with just the work that was being done. I don't know exactly how she inculcated herself to the language unit, but she was just, doing bits and bots. And Margaret was like, "Hey, you want a job since you seem to be sticking around anyways?" And she's like, "Yeah, thank you," and she just took it up.
That's so cool.
Yeah, and another reason that Margaret really wanted to have Karen on her team was because while everybody over there in that language research unit was figuring out how to convert human language in order to get a machine to understand it, Karen went up and was like, why don't we just teach computers to understand how we speak instead, rather than us modifying the language? Masterman saw this enthusiasm, and that's pretty much why she even offered the job. That kind of began her journey into computing. And bear in mind, this woman has zero coding background, right? Like she didn't come from science. She didn't come from computers and technology, and it's still so early. I think we're talking about
I was gonna say,
50s?
like, what year is this? Yeah, so coding
This is like the
itself is a pretty
1950s.
new field. Like,
Exactly, yeah. So she's quoted on saying how she pretty much exploited her husband as much as she could.
play.
Yeah. I love her. She's so honest about all of these things.
That's so good.
She got him to teach her coding, and yeah, she just started building off of the work that he had already done. So yeah, teamwork to make a dream work, I guess.
Amazing. Love that.
And then from this point on, as soon as she was employed and she was, getting into the whole coding, teaching herself and everything, her life basically just kicked into fifth gear. By 1954, she published a paper. She's already published a paper. Okay.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And she titled this Synonymy and Semantic Classification. I won't get into a whole lot of detail about this because I feel like it's quite a complex subject even for me to grasp it while I was reading through. But I will let you know that this is considered as one of those foundational papers in the field of natural language processing.
Ah, cool.
Like NLP today, and it absolutely stuns me because this is a woman that was way beyond her years, right?
Yeah. Yep.
She's doing stuff that we're researching today
Yeah.
a good
Yeah, well,
a
I feel
good
like
60 years before.
yeah, well, natural language processing is still one of the kind of new-ish computing topics, right? Like, but it's been
Exactly,
around,
yeah.
like she was doing this in the 50s. That's crazy.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. So after this, her interest kind of strayed towards a particular field with language called IR, or information retrieval. So information retrieval basically deals with the importance of a word or a document, and it's generally regarded as how important is this document amongst other documents. And the way that they measure this is by just counting uh, how often a word appears in a user's search and how many
Ah,
times
right.
that has appeared in that document, right? So it's just driven by this term called by this phrase called term frequency. So let's say you're looking up something about, I don't know, dinosaurs. Yeah. And you're particularly interested. I don't know, Beth, give me a dinosaur. You're the dinosaur expert here, I think.
Uh,
Give me like
I
one.
don't think I'm an expert, but Stegosaurus.
Yeah, like a stegosaurus, right? You want to compare a couple of different papers about dinosaurs, and you want to know what's the most relevant one to stegosaurus. So
Hmm.
you are counting up how many times stegosaurus appears in each of these documents, and
Yeah, yep.
then you kind of just rank them. It makes perfect sense, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the more number of times that it appears, the more relevant that it would be. But the problem here is that it's it's very tough to just rank a document's relevancy based simply on the number of frequently appearing words. Because when you're looking at, because it's not just a single paper, we're looking at documents with like thousands of words, and
Yeah.
it's so often that thousands of words could also include filler words like the or so
Yep.
and stuff like that. And this absolutely stunned IR researchers because they were like, how do we filter this out without, because they can't just build something that would just filter these words out, because what if that excludes other important terms?
Yeah.
Yeah. And in 1972, Karen knew about this problem, and she introduced an absolutely new, fresh viewpoint about how not all of those words should be given an equal weight. So she came in with this viewpoint about assigning a particular weight to each of these words.
Yeah.
And the way that she introduced this is with a computational measure called the inverse document frequency. Yeah, are you with me so far? I know it's a lot of.
Yes.
I
No,
feel
no,
like
no.
I've been throwing a lot of
Makes
terms.
total sense. Yep.
Yeah, with IDF, the way that she introduced this is with a logarithmic formula. And what it does is basically counts amongst your total list of documents. It counts the total number of documents in which the word that you're looking for appears in,
Right. Okay.
right? And because it's wrapped up in a log, it essentially tries to scale that value. So unlike term frequency, which assigns a document a higher rank based on the number of times a word would appear, IDF works in the opposite way, the inverse way, and hence its name,
Yeah.
where it lessens the importance of the words in a search query that are very common in each document. Then she introduced TF-IDF, which is a multiplication of both of these. That score is assigned to each word, and then you know that the higher the TF-IDF score, the more relevant that word is to be considered in a document.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, and what this does is it basically just filters out those excess common words such as the or for or and, he, she. Because even though they might have a higher term frequency, they would have a very low IDF because they would appear pretty much in all of the documents.
Every
If you've
document,
got if you've got 100 documents, it's going to appear in all of them. And the IDF score then reduces. So the TF-IDF is super useful to help you find what's rare across all of these documents, and it then gets you the most relevant ones out of that.
That's so interesting.
Isn't it? Yeah, and like in 1970s, she's cracked the code. And think about it, because approximately 20 years from that day, two PhD students in Stanford would be busy building Google based on that very algorithm.
Yeah, wow. That's amazing. I mean, it makes sense, right? Like you go through and you kind of give a uniqueness score to figure out the important words.
Yeah, and
then
it's
you rank
such
the
a simple
documents by
concept.
those. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's a very simple concept, but I suppose at that time it would have been, I can't imagine just
Well, it's one of
waking
those
up
things
one
that
day
it
and just coming up with it.
it makes sense once you hear it, but like, yeah, like to just come up with that is amazing.
She's pretty much rightfully earned her title because she's very popularly known as Karen, the search engine enabler.
Yep, that makes sense.
Yeah. So once she got this out and pretty much solved this dilemma that, IR researchers were fumbling with until that time, she continued to get a couple more papers published within the field of NLP itself. Naturally moved towards a teaching career again. Well, yeah, kind of like a full circle at this point, but this time as a professor in Cambridge.
Yep.
And if you want, her lectures are still available on YouTube if you just want to give it a listen. If anyone, for anyone who's like intrigued, because this woman's got a sense of humor as well, right? She says some unhinged things sometimes. So
love that.
And I found this interesting bit of news from a website called Extreme Networks, where they do a spotlight as well on underrated women throughout history. The more and more she went up in her teaching career at that time, once again, let's try to remind ourselves that it's still, the 1970s, the 1980s.
Yeah.
So she kept acquiring a bunch of different degrees. And she was surrounded with people who would just go, higher education isn't exactly the kind of thing you should let women have. And to them, she just said these people are outdated. Get them out of here. Like, don't let me near them.
That's so good.
Yeah, and she didn't even have to say anything because her work said it all for her. She published over 200 research papers and books.
What?
Yeah, 200.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's like that. What was that bit in Hamilton where he wrote a lot of letters sitting in that room? That's what it reminded me of. Like she's just sitting there, just writing papers and sort of essays.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing, especially considering her tech career wasn't her first career. Like this was something that she moved into, and then wow.
And she just owned this. She absolutely owned this. She just kept writing so many valuable research papers, which are just the foundations of natural language processing today. She's a force to be reckoned with, man.
Amazing.
I also got to know that she's the recipient of the ACL, which is the Association for Computational Language Lifetime Achievement Award. Obviously,
makes
has
sense.
to be. She's also gotten the Lovelace Medal after Ada Lovelace, the first programmer. And that's granted by the British Computer Society in 2007. So that's her latest achievement. She passed away a month later in 2007, in April of 2007. And right after she received the Lovelace Medal, right, she was interviewed by someone. And these are her famous last words, where she just said, computing is too important to be left to men.
Oh my gosh, that's so
If
good.
I want to go saying something absolutely epic like that.
That's so good. That's such a good mantra for our podcast and for just
It
even in tech
is.
in general. Too important to
Yeah.
be left to the men. That's so
It is
excellent.
too important to be left to the men. In honor of, Karen and her lifetime's achievement, the British Computer Society established the Karen Spärck Jones Award in 2008. And this was to recognize researchers in the natural language processing field as well as information retrieval. Here's a funny bit. By 2019, the New York Times featured this whole obituary on her as part of their Overlooked series. And this obituary not only highlighted her remarkable professional accomplishments, but also her 100% unhinged, quirky, vibrant personality, where she's known for her booming voice and puckish sense of humor, and listen to this, and her unconventional habit of bicycling to formal dinners with her dress pinned to her handlebars.
That's so good.
I love her. She's got style.
What an icon.
What an absolute icon. She's not excusing or modifying herself to satisfy anybody's whims or whatever it may be. She's truly herself.
Yeah, love that.
Truly herself. I want to start bicycling to formal dinners.
Yeah. It's a new strategy for managing evening gowns.
Yeah, getting it pinned to handlebars.
So funny. I'm trying to imagine what that looks like.
Yeah, a force to be reckoned with here, Karen Spärck Jones. Thanks to her, we know exactly how Google works.
Amazing.
And I can put in absolute nonsense queries and it's going to return the most relevant pages. All right, so today's topic of teaching, if it isn't obvious already, is the TF-IDF algorithm invented by Karen herself. As we know, this is a product of two different terms or two calculations. The first thing is term frequency. So term frequency, simply put, is just the number of times a word appears in a document. And the easiest way that you can do it is by taking a raw count, which is the number of times a word appears in a document, divided by the total length of the document. So let's say I'm reading up an article about aliens, because that's just what I'm interested in right now. So I'm going to read up a document, and the first document that I've pulled up on it mentions the word aliens 3 times, and its total length is 15. So 3 by 15, which is 0.2, is this particular word's term frequency. What term frequency gets multiplied with is the inverse document frequency. And this is the number of documents where the word occurs across a whole set of documents. The easiest way to think about this is like you've got a bunch of different articles about aliens, right? And you wanna you don't want to go through like all of them, but you do want to find out what's most relevant to you. So for now, you're just going to take account of these number of articles that mention or have the word aliens or have that particular term. And what you're going to do is you're going to take the total number of documents that you have on hand and divide it by the number of documents that contain the word. And then finally, you're going to take a log of it, or the log to the base of 10. So let's say you've got 1,000 articles, 300 of them mention or have that term. That's going to come up to some number. I'm not sure what that number is, but the log to the base 10 of 1,000 by 300 is 0.52. The reason we take the log value, as mentioned before, is basically to scale that value. It's very easy to think for this purpose of this example or as just, 1,000 documents. That seems like a doable number. That seems like, why do we need log for that? I mean, this is a number that I can think of. But we need to realize that at this point, we're interacting with a machine that only understands numbers. So we're not just looking at 1,000 documents, we're looking at million, and not just 1 million.
Yeah.
We're looking at millions
Like
of them.
when you do a search, and then it's got to look through
Exactly,
so
yeah.
much stuff.
When you're looking, exactly, it's got to look through this, is because the search results of of Google, it gives you a minimum of 20 pages, right? And that means that many level of documents. So that's why we take the logarithmic value, because it scales down the number of values. And what happens here is it's quite interesting, because for the purpose of the example again, 1,000 documents that we have on hand, when a particular term appears in only 100 of them or 300 of them, you know that, oh, this is fairly a rare term, right? Because it's only appearing in a few of them. And what that does is, when you take the logarithmic value, it's a number that's closer to 1. Whereas if you have a term that's more frequently occurring, and let's say it appears in all 1,000 of these documents, a very easy term that occurs like that is, or the, and filler terms or joining verbs.
Yep.
And what that makes the mathematical formula do is, you go 1,000 by 1,000, that's 1, and log to the base 10 of 1 is basically 0, which is quite handy when it comes to calculating the product. So even if a term appears 10 times in a document length of 15, it may seem like it has a pretty high level of term frequency, but because its inverse document frequency is basically 0, it doesn't really hold any importance. And that's what helps us determine the weightage to the number of words. Now, let's take another example where you're looking for aliens, right? You're interested in documents that contain aliens or that contain information about aliens. So, one document, it's got a length of 15 words. It's got the word aliens appearing 3 times. 3 by 15, you've got 0.2. Another document has 70 words, and the term alien appears only once. So 1 by 70, you've already got 0.01, or just a very tiny little term frequency. Multiply this by our inverse document frequency of the log to the base 10 value. Let's say it's appearing in 300 documents. We've got 0.52 again. So document 1 then has a TF-IDF value of 0.1 something, whereas document 2, because it's multiplied with a smaller value of term frequency, has a TF-IDF value that's tending a bit closer to 0. So it almost goes like 0.007. And that is the basis of how Google decides what's the most relevant document that contains the information that you want, because now there is a score against each of these documents. Document 1 has more relevant information about aliens than document 2. What this also helps us do is it's sussing out context, where maybe document 1 is something that actually talks about extraterrestrial life, but document 2 probably uses the word once by accident. It could have been a spelling mistake, or it could have just said the word alien as
in a different
term
meaning,
in a different context. Exactly, like she felt alienated, and it was like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, that one. But if you went with the traditional approach that researchers in information retrieval were going with, each of these documents could have been given an equal importance, because they were like, oh yeah, that document mentions it too, so we're going to have to look through that. When in reality, the entire context of that document could have been completely different.
Yeah.
So when you get it to TF-IDF, it really helps. The weightage aspect is what helps separate the importance of these documents. It helps them rank it, and that's pretty much how Google serves you up the best and most relevant documents to your use case. The reason we do all of this in calculations is because machines understand numbers better than anything else.
Yes.
When you feed it a sentence, it's not going to understand the sentence, but it's going to understand the number of terms. It's going to understand counts. It's going to understand numbers. Yeah, and that's that's pretty much the essence of it. I know it's a lot to grasp out of, audio, especially because there's so much math involved. But if you guys do want to learn way more about it, or if you are interested in delving deeper into the topic, possibly trying out some examples for yourself, there are a couple of links in the description mentioned below. I've linked a bunch of articles that I've read, which has helped me grasp the concept quite clearly. I've also listed out some YouTube videos that you can check out if you're a visual learner. And hopefully that might get you interested in this topic, and maybe you can start discovering some more use cases.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Akshaya. That's so interesting.
Yeah, I hope that was easy. It's definitely not something a 10-year-old would be interested in, but I hope it gets them going. All right. So what possibly could have been the use of TF-IDF from, ages ago to how is it relevant now? Obviously, search engines use it, and search engine optimization is driven by this algorithm. But beyond search engine, just search engine optimization, we have large language models today that are taking the industry by a storm. We've got GPT, we've got GPT-4, and the mechanisms of all of these models that are coming out is based on query optimization. It's like when you ask them something, how relevant is their answer back? So there definitely is a use case of TF-IDF there, because GPT is just sitting there going through tons and tons of documents and ranking the most relevant answer to give you, no matter how wild your query may be. It gives you something relevant. To think about how TF-IDF could also be used with user profiles or user modeling, where when you're going through a lot of, let's say, your shopping or even just the articles that you're reading online, right? If somebody's just sitting there kind of assessing what are the kind of articles that you're interested in, because then they'd be able to get the scores of the most relevant words of each of these articles, or the most relevant words out of your shopping history, stuff like that, or your watch history. So it's the powering algorithm through your recommendation systems. It kind of helps you create a whole user profile, kind of helps you draft out what this person may like, what this person is frequently searching about, what has them spending out their wallet, stuff like that, I suppose.
It's how it knows
it's how
what
it knows.
YouTube videos I'm going to watch before I even know that I want to watch them.
Exactly. Recommendation system. Or for Netflix, for that matter, how they work. There was also a paper published in 2020 by the Tehran University of Medical Sciences, where a bunch of students covered on how they could use TF-IDF in order to study emerging trends. And this is by basically allocating scores to the words in newly published health research papers. And that helped them get all kinds of trends about where health was heading into, what's upcoming, what's hot. So topic modeling, that was actually a pretty fun use case, I think. So I thought this could really delve into how news articles can be then summarized, what to look out for, what are the hot topics today, how the most relevant hashtags get out, or how the most relevant news to you gets out there, how you can really stay ahead of the curve by already knowing what's an emerging new topic, stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, really, it sounds like anything that's processing language, like
yeah,
documents, ranking things, like it's going to be relevant in that scenario, which is so much of what we do. I mean, like GPT is essentially an advanced search engine, like when you think about it. So
it is. Yeah, and it's all just, once again, like, I know I've said this, but it is quite crazy to think how well ahead of her time she was, because by the time it was 1970s, we wouldn't think that this a simple algorithm found its use case all the way through 2024 and even further. That absolutely redefines how we talk to machines. Yeah.
That's so cool. And I'm glad that she was around long enough to see kind of like some of the places that was used, like Google and
Yeah. And inspire more women and inspire
yeah.
more people to pursue natural language processing.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Akshaya. I think, does that bring us to the end of episode 1?
Pretty much, yeah. That was all about Karen Spärck Jones and TF-IDF, the term frequency inverse document frequency algorithm that redefines how we get computers to understand us.
Amazing. That's so interesting. That's such a great first topic. Thank you so much for preparing it. I feel like I've
Oh,
learned
thanks for
heaps.
being a good student.
No worries, anytime.
Yes.
So thank you everyone for listening. And as I said in our episode 0, if you have any recommendations of women that you'd like us to talk about or concepts that you're interested in, feel free to send them through to biteclubpodcast@gmail.com. Otherwise, I guess stick around for our next episode in 2 weeks. I'll be reporting on another cool woman in the tech space. So look forward to that. But yeah, I guess we'll wrap it up there.
Yep. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Akshaya. All right.
Thanks,
Bye, everyone.
Bye.